Attention, brave souls. What you're about to witness might make your heart race. Before the suspense takes over your screen, click subscribe now and hit the like button. Get ready for a spine-chilling experience. But be warned, only the boldest will survive until the end.
My name is Captain Logan Mitchell, and I'm 38 years old. Officially, I'm the leader of the Apex Unit, a specialized task force whose primary purpose is to neutralize rogue technologies threatening national security. At least, that's the story they feed the public. The truth is far darker, something that doesn't make it into government reports or mainstream media. We deal with things that shouldn't exist, creatures that crawl out of nightmares and take form in the shadows. The kind of things that make even the most hardened soldiers question their sanity. What I'm about to share with you isn't in any official record. It's classified, buried under layers of red tape and denials. But I can't keep this to myself any longer. People need to know what's out there, what's waiting in the places humanity was never meant to tread. The call came in the middle of the night. It always does. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, its glow piercing the darkness. I answered without hesitation. The voice on the other end, clipped and emotionless, gave me coordinates and a time. Alaska, remote, classified priority. That was all I needed to hear. By sunrise, I was on a military transport, my team assembled and ready. 12 men and women, all of them skilled, experienced, and completely unaware of what awaited us. I gave them the same speech I always do. This is just another mission. Stick to protocol. Watch each other's backs. But even as I said it, I could feel the unease settling in my chest. Something about this assignment felt wrong. When we landed, the air hit me like a slap, thin, frigid, and unwelcoming. The village was a cluster of weathered cabins huddled against the endless expanse of snow. The locals didn't greet us with curiosity or relief. Instead, they watched from behind curtains, their faces pale and hollow-eyed. It wasn't fear of us. They were afraid of something far worse. I approached the only man willing to speak to us, a grizzled elder wrapped in thick furs. His voice trembled as he spoke. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "It's awake now, and it knows you're here." "What's awake?" I pressed, but he only shook his head. "We call it the Wendigo, but it's not a legend, it's real." His words sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. We found the first tracks less than an hour into our search. Massive, clawed footprints sunk deep into the snow, leading into the dense forest. They weren't animal tracks, at least not any animal I'd ever encountered. Something about them felt deliberate, as if the creature wanted us to follow. The deeper we went, the quieter the world became. No birds, no wind. Just the crunch of snow under our boots and the faint crackle of our radios. It felt like the forest was holding its breath, watching us with unseen eyes. Then we found the deer. It hung from a tree, its body shredded and mutilated beyond recognition. Blood dripped onto the snow, forming strange, swirling patterns. One of my men, Carter, muttered under his breath, "This isn't natural." He was right. The patterns weren't random. They were symbols, ancient and unnerving. Before we could process what we were seeing, the forest came alive with movement. Branches snapped, shadows flickered, and an inhuman growl rumbled through the trees. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I held my ground, gripping my rifle tightly. "Stay sharp," I barked, but even I wasn't prepared for what happened next. It hit us like a hurricane, a blur of claws and teeth that moved too fast to track. In seconds, one of my men was gone, dragged into the darkness with a scream that still haunts me. We opened fire, but it was like shooting at a ghost. It didn't just vanish. It melted into the shadows, leaving nothing behind but blood stains and the sound of our own panicked breathing. That was the first time I saw it, or thought I did. A hulking shape, just out of focus, with eyes that glowed like embers. It wasn't just hunting us. It was toying with us, testing our limits. We regrouped, shaken but determined. I knew we couldn't retreat. Not yet. If we turned back now, whatever this thing was would keep hunting, and the village would be its next target. No, we had to press on, but deep down, I wondered if we were walking into our own graves. As the night closed in around us, the forest seemed to shift, becoming something alive, something hungry. And I realized then that this wasn't just a mission. It was a nightmare we might never wake up from. This is just the beginning of what we found out there. If you're listening, heed my warning, stay out of the dark. Because once it sees you, it never lets go. The snow crunched beneath our boots, the only sound in a world swallowed by silence. Even the wind seemed afraid to disturb this place, moving cautiously through the trees like it might draw the wrong attention. The deeper we went, the heavier the air became, pressing on us with an invisible weight. It wasn't just the cold, it was the feeling of being watched, stalked. Captain, Corporal Reyes whispered, his voice barely audible through the comms. Movement, 10 o'clock. I froze, my pulse spiking as my eyes scanned the tree line ahead. The forest seemed unnaturally still, as though it held its breath, waiting for something. My hand tightened around my rifle as I signaled for the team to hold position. The Apex unit was trained for this, silent predators in our own right. But this wasn't an ordinary hunt. Every instinct screamed that we were outmatched, that we were playing a game we didn't fully understand. Negative, I replied quietly, even though my gut told me Reyes was right. Something was out there, circling us, testing us. The tracks we'd been following were erratic, as if whatever we were chasing was toying with us. But this wasn't a wild animal. It couldn't be. No animal leaves claw marks that high up in the trees or tears apart its prey with surgical precision. No animal plays with its food like this. The tracks led us to a clearing, and there it was. A grotesque display. A deer, or what was left of it, hung from a tree by its own entrails. The snow beneath it stained dark with blood. Strips of fur and flesh dangled from branches like grisly ornaments. One of my men swore under his breath. I didn't blame him. Eyes up, I barked, scanning the perimeter. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. This is a message. Stay sharp. A message. That's what it felt like. The precision, the placement. It wasn't just a kill. It was a warning. We pressed on, though every step felt heavier than the last. The forest seemed alive, shifting around us, closing in. Shadows danced just beyond the edge of our lights, and every now and then, I caught the glint of eyes staring back. Too many eyes. Too close. The comms crackled. Captain, I swear I heard. Hold it together, Reyes. I cut him off, though my own nerves were fraying. I couldn't let them see it. If I broke, we all would. Then came the scream, high, piercing, and inhuman. It echoed through the trees, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The kind of sound that doesn't just fill your ears. It burrows into your bones. We snapped into formation, rifles raised, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. Contact. Sergeant Klein shouted, firing into the trees. The forest exploded into chaos. Shadows darted between the trees, too fast to track. Bullets tore through branches, splintering wood, but we hit nothing. Nothing solid anyway. It was playing with us, testing our reactions, wearing us down. Hold your fire, I ordered, though the command felt futile. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't afraid of us. And it wasn't alone. We regrouped, retreating to higher ground where we could set up a perimeter. That's when we found it. The facility. It loomed out of the forest like a scar, a squat, concrete bunker half buried in the snow. It was old, abandoned, but not empty. The locks were broken, the doors hanging open as if something had forced its way in, or out. Inside, the air was stale and cold, the walls lined with rusted equipment and faded documents. But it wasn't just the decay that made the place feel wrong. It was the lingering sense of something unnatural. Captain, you need to see this. Corporal Yates called from a side room. I stepped in and immediately felt my stomach churn. The walls were covered in diagrams, sketches of things that shouldn't exist, creatures with too many eyes, limbs twisted in impossible ways. And there, in the center of the room, was a tank, cracked and empty, its contents long gone. The label read, Project Chimera, Subject Alpha. This wasn't a hunting ground. It was a lab. And whatever we were chasing wasn't born. It was made. Before we could process what we'd found, the thing attacked. It came out of nowhere. A blur of teeth and claws that ripped through the room like a storm. Klein went down first, his scream cut short as he was dragged into the darkness. "Let it up," I shouted, unloading my rifle into the shadows. The strobe of muzzle flashes illuminated flashes of the creature. Elongated limbs, a mouth that split too wide, eyes that glowed with a malevolent intelligence. It wasn't just hunting us, it was enjoying this. We fought our way out, but it wasn't a victory, it was survival. By the time we reached the surface, we'd lost 3 more men. The creature didn't follow. It didn't need to. It had made its point. It could have killed us all, but it let us go. Why? Because it wanted us to remember. As we regrouped outside, the snow began to fall again, covering the tracks, erasing the evidence. But the images in my mind wouldn't be so easily buried. The claw marks, the grotesque sketches, the words etched into the frost, covered walls of the lab. We are watching. We weren't the hunters here. We never had been. And as we trudged back into the forest, every step taking us closer to the extraction point, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd only scratched the surface of something much, much worse. The wind cut through the canyon like the scream of a banshee, a hollow, piercing wail that seemed to echo the dread pulsing in my chest. My breath formed thick clouds in the frigid air, and every crunch of snow beneath my boots felt like a signal flare to the predators stalking us. We were down to 3 now. Myself, Sergeant Clean, and Specialist Rivera. The rest of the Apex unit had been picked off, one by one by that thing, the Wendigo entity. It wasn't just a creature. It was something worse, something that shouldn't exist. The narrow canyon walls loomed around us, their jagged faces closing in like a predator's jaws. The plan was simple on paper: funnel it here, trap it and finish it. We'd rigged the cliffs with explosives, carefully placed to bring down an avalanche of rock at the right moment. But the creature was cunning, too cunning. It had studied us, toyed with us, turned our instincts against us. And it wasn't just hunting us, it was enjoying it. I gripped my rifle tighter, the cold metal biting into my gloves. Rivera's voice crackled over the comms, barely audible over the rising howl of the wind. "Captain, I swear I just saw." Her voice cut off. A low, guttural growl echoed from somewhere ahead. It wasn't human, but it wasn't entirely animal either. "Rivera, report." I barked, my voice harsh and desperate. Silence answered me. Clean looked at me, his face pale beneath the streaks of grime and dried blood. "She's gone, isn't she?" he whispered. I didn't answer. We pressed forward, the canyon growing darker as the storm clouds above swallowed what little light remained. Shadows danced along the icy walls, twisting and writhing like specters. Every sound felt amplified. The crunch of snow, the faint whistle of the wind, the thundering pulse in my ears. Then we saw it. It stood at the far end of the canyon, partially shrouded in mist. Its form was wrong, as if it had been stitched together from nightmares. Jagged antlers crowned a head that seemed to shift and shimmer, its eyes glowing with an unnatural, malevolent light. Its body was a grotesque amalgamation of sinew and bone, draped in tattered flesh that seemed to crawl with its own life. It didn't charge, it didn't roar. It just stood there, watching us, studying us. "Hold your ground," I said, though my voice wavered. Clean raised his weapon, but his hands were trembling. "Clean, don't." Too late. He fired. The bullets ripped through the air, striking the creature squarely in the chest. But it didn't flinch. It didn't bleed. Instead, it let out a sound that froze the blood in my veins. A laugh. Low, guttural, mocking. Clean screamed and bolted, running back toward the canyon entrance. "Clean, stop," I shouted, but he didn't listen. The creature moved then, faster than I could comprehend. One moment it was standing still, the next it was upon him. Clean's scream was cut short as the creature's claws tore through him with surgical precision. His body hit the ground in pieces. I was alone. I felt the weight of despair pressing down on me, but there was no time to dwell on it. The creature turned its glowing eyes toward me, and I knew it was my turn. My hands moved on instinct, arming the detonator clipped to my belt. "Come on," I muttered, backing toward the trap zone. "Come on, you son of a..." The creature lunged. I dove to the side, snow spraying around me as its claws slashed through the air where I'd just been. Rolling to my feet, I sprinted toward the center of the canyon, where the explosives were set. My lungs burned, my muscles screamed, but I didn't stop. It was right behind me. I could feel its presence, hear the crunch of its footsteps, the guttural growl that reverberated through the air. My thumb hovered over the detonator switch. Just a few more feet. I reached the center and spun around to face it. The creature paused, tilting its head as if amused by my defiance. "Let's end this," I said, and pressed the detonator. The explosion was deafening, a thunderous roar that shook the earth beneath my feet. The canyon walls collapsed in a cascade of rock and ice, burying the creature in an instant. Dust and debris filled the air, choking the light and muffling all sound. I didn't expect to survive, but somehow I did, cuffing, battered, and bleeding. I clawed my way out of the rubble. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant howl of the wind. I staggered to my feet, every muscle screaming in protest, and looked back at the pile of debris. It was over, or so I thought. As the extraction team arrived, I noticed something on the hood of their vehicle, a series of deep, deliberate claw marks. My blood ran cold. Some things can't be killed, they just wait.